came two false witnesses that started accusing Jesus and said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. You know, he said, I can build this temple back in 3 days. And the high priest arose and said unto him, answerest thou nothing? What is this which these witnesses against thee? What's this that they got against you? They asked. But Jesus held his peace. And the high priest answered and said unto him, I adjure thee by the living God, that thou tell us whether thou be the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said unto them, thou hast said, nevertheless I say unto you, hereafter shall ye see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power, and coming in the clouds of heaven. And then the high priest rent his clothes, saying, he has spoken blasphemy. What further need have we of witnesses? Behold, now we have heard his blasphemy. You know, they said he has blasphemed the Holy Ghost. He has said this. What think ye? They answered and said, he is guilty of death. Then did they spit in his face and buffeted him, and others smote him with the palms of their hands, saying, prophesy to us, thou Christ, who is he that smote thee? If you are Christ, you tell me who smote thee, who hit you? You know, they was picking at him, Brother Mark. They was trying to get him to say, you know, that he was. You know, because they was finding everything against him and stuff. As we jump over the 27th, it says, when the morning was come, all the chief and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. You know, they done had it in for him, Brother Mark. There wasn't no good that he could do. You know, he couldn't, no matter what good. Have you ever seen somebody, Sister Bobby, that maybe looks at you like that? No matter how good you can do for them, no matter how good what you can do, if they got filed against you, Brother Jim, if they've got it in for you, they're going to just accuse you. It don't matter, like I talked one time, if you even bought them a new car and give them, they got filed against you, that you ain't going to do them no good. And that's what they done had it in for him. You know, it says under Roman rule, the Jewish leaders had no authority to inflict a capital punishment. So, you know, the Jews couldn't put him to death. Only the Romans could do this at this time. It says, and when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. So, you know, he was the only one that could do this. Therefore, we now see that they hurried Jesus up. They hurried him up to get him to this man, to crucify him and stuff. You know, through the hatred of everything, Romans was intense. They were willing to use this power to satisfy the greater hatred. You know, even the Jews, Brother Jim, didn't like the Romans at this time, but they had a greater need. They had a greater power. They said, hey, this Roman king was the only thing that really killed Jesus. Because he, you know, Sister Bobby, he had the only power to kill Jesus. So they made good with it. They made good with this king and stuff, or this governor. So they hurried him up while Pilate was still in. You know, he came for a feast at this time. His reason he is there. So, you know, they hurried Jesus up. It says, then Judas, which had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. You know, he brought them back. You know, Sister Bobby, it's the same way the world does us. When we get down, we might think that we can betray Jesus. You know, every time that we turn and go back to the world, we're betraying Jesus. We're crucifying God. But you know, when we're down on our luck and down when nobody else has nothing to do with us, Brother Jim, you know, even the world won't have nothing to do with us. A lot of times we think, hey, you know, there's more offered out here in the world and stuff, so I'll just turn back to the world instead of living for this Jesus. But you know, Brother Jim, there ain't nothing out there to turn to. They're only to, you know, the devil says he's out to kill, steal, and devour. That's all he's out to do. The world ain't even out to help us. They wasn't out to help him. You know, realizing his sins betrayed innocent blood, Judas offered the money back to the chief priests, elders. But you know, Sister Bob, they didn't even want it back. These arch conspirators had cooperated so eagerly a few hours before he came back. They was anxious, to gather with him, to deal with him. To do what Judas wanted. They said, we'll give you 30 pieces of silver for this man. But now they didn't even want nothing to do with him. They didn't even want nothing to do with Judas. 4 says, I have sinned in that I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they said, what is that to do to us? Say thou to that. Well, in other words, what is that to us? We don't have nothing to do with you no more. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple, and departed and went and hung himself. Like I say, it says that sin is just for a short time, then it brings death. He thought that he was doing good, Brother Mark. He thought, hey, the 30 pieces of silver that I got, it was good. But now he realizes that he traded innocent blood. That he sinned against God. As I said, if we flipped over even to Samuel, Saul even thought that he was doing good. But he realized that he had sinned against God. Brother Jim, that's the only way that we can ever get forgiveness is we've got to realize that we've sinned against God. That God, that sin brings us forth to death. And, that's what he said. He said, I have sinned against God. And the chief priest took the silver and said, it is not lawful for us to put them into the treasury because it is the price of blood. They wasn't allowed to get the money and put back because they'd already sold somebody's life. These chief priests felt no guilt in giving Judas money to betray an innocent man. But when Judas returned the money, the priest couldn't accept it because it was wrong to accept blood money payment for murder, for their hatred against God, against Jesus, had caused them to lose all sense of justice. It caused them to lose all senses. And they took counsel and brought with them the potter's field, bought the potter's field to bury strangers in. This potter's field, Brother Jim, was to bury strange people when they killed them. When they died, it was to bury them in. They used money to buy a potter's field where unclean Gentile strangers might be buried, little realizing how many Gentiles would invade their land and splatter their blood in the streets. Brother Jim, they still didn't realize, Israel didn't realize what they was asking, what they was doing. And still today, they're still doing the same thing. Still, they've had wars, rumors of wars and stuff in Israel and stuff. Wherefore, that field was called a field of blood still to this day. It had been a field of blood for that guilty nation ever since. Ever since they betrayed Jesus. It still happens today. Then was the fulfillment which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, and they took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him that was valued, whom they of the children of Israel did value, and gave them for the potter's field as the Lord appointed them. They traded that for the potter's field. Sister Bob, not knowing still today what they was really asking for. It says, and then Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, art thou the king of the Jews? And Jesus said unto him, thou sayest. You sayest I am. What they was trying to do was find Brother Mark trying to say, are you the king? If he had admitted that he was the king, and they was trying to get him because, there's only one king, they said, in the nation at that time. So, they was trying to get him to admit, are you the king? Are you the king that you say you are? He said, thou sayest thou art. You say that I am. And when he was accused of the chief priest and elders, he answered nothing. He didn't say nothing. Then said Pilate to him, hearest that not how many things they witness against thee? Jesus, don't you hear what they're saying about you? Ain't you even going to take up for yourself? Ain't you even going to do anything? But they never said nothing. And he answered him